And got it. I have an irrational fear of laptops dying in the middle of recording. I don't want anything to die in the middle of recording. Okay. I think we're good. I think we're great to go. I think I'm going to say hi to everyone on YouTube. Free to comment. Okay, so let's get into some recording. Let's record some stuff. Matthew's here. Now we can get started. Thanks for joining us, Matthew. We're going to get cranking here. When the timer runs out on Instagram, follow me on YouTube. I'll figure out how to get you a link or something to that. And tweet me at Curtis_podcast. If you have any other questions, feel free to drop a comment in the Instagram live streams, and I'll pin it to the top and try to get that answered. But I figure we would kind of get into it. Welcome to Creative Crunch. I'm your host, Curtis Tucker, and today's this is called Getting Warmed Up. And the last time the issue I had was I kept looking at my laptop, but I really don't think I need that keyboard until the end. So I might just do something like this. All right. Welcome to Creative Crunch. I'm your host, Curtis Tucker, and today we're going to be talking about social media stocks a little bit and some publicly traded companies in the social media sphere. We're going to be talking about what's new on the gram. That's our reoccurring segment that we have if you're a listener for a while now. And then we're going to kind of recap and talk about what's going on with the Art Institute and the recent wave of closures that they've had and how they've been dealing with that, or as I'll say, not dealing with it, and what's going on there. I've got a couple interviews slated that you've probably heard, one from Bridget Gallery and another one from Creatos. So you've probably heard that if you're an active listener on the podcast. And then I figured we would get into the Instagram polls that I asked you guys about over the weekend, usually on a Saturday or a Sunday on my Instagram at Curtis. I've been asking questions and polling people that I follow just to kind of get a sense and do some firsthand research of what's going on in the art industry and what's going on in the art industry in Denver. So I figured we would talk about this weekend's Instagram polls and some feedback that I've been getting from you guys, which is great. I always appreciate that. And I'll check my Twitter again, but it hasn't been too poppin'. But feel free to tweet me at Curtis_podcast with any of your questions, comments, concerns, a retweet, a story that you think should be covered. Feel free to just send that stuff my way. It's a two-way street. So I think that'll kind of be the bulk of today's episode. So let's get into it. A quick shout out to everyone watching on the live streams on Instagram, and now I'm doing it on YouTube. This happens every Monday from noon to 3 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. My Instagram is at Curtis, or my YouTube link. I will figure out how to get that out there into the world so you can start watching those live streams. And then you can always tweet me at Curtis_podcast. I've been calling that the customer service department for this podcast. And if you want to just talk to me there, feel free to do so. And you can always just tweet me things there. And I've really been trying to build that up and really touch a slightly different audience. And if you're listening on anchor.fm/Creative Crunch, something in the episode has sparked your brain or has caught your interest, you can send me an audio message on anchor.fm/Creative Crunch, and I'll be using those in future episodes to kind of engage dialogue and to kind of stimulate things. I really love having guests on, and so audio messages through anchor.fm is a great way to kind of get involved if you're a little intimidated by doing a whole interview, or if you just have a thought that you wanted to get out into the world. Feel free to do that on anchor.fm/Creative Crunch. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, and you like what you hear, please consider leaving a review. That always helps my standings with Creative Crunch, and it will really help get our conversation out to a larger audience. Is leaving reviews on this podcast, sharing it out. Thank you to everyone on Facebook who's kind of been sharing my Facebook content out there. So, thank you to everyone for the support. And now let's just push this even further. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or something like that, please leave a review. If you're on anchor.fm, please leave an audio message. I would love to hear what you're thinking. And just, so you're aware, Creative Crunch is also available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and several other platforms. So tell your friends to tune in wherever they listen. Creative Crunch is getting widely distributed thanks to Anchor.fm. They've been great, and I really hope you guys don't mind the little roll at the end of the episode if you're listening there. But really, it's been wonderful to work with Anchor and to work with Anchor.fm to get Creative Crunch launched. Paired with your guys' support, it's been really taking off. I have something like 43 unique listens or whatever. I don't really try to keep mind of analytics, but I really appreciate that. JPen II just joined, so if you want to send an invitation to co-host, I'd love to knock that interview out or field some of your questions because I know we DM'd a little bit. So if you want to send me a request to co-host this live stream, you're more than welcome to, Jose, or you can just keep submitting comments and I'll try to get to those. But if you're really willing, I'd love to have another face on the live stream for a little bit today. So let me know if you're up for that, JPen II, because we would like to get that done, and I think some of our viewers would like to see that as well. I keep blocking my face with my hand on my DSLR camera. Not like you guys need to know that, but it is kind of a good time to just do a little bit of fluff and do a little bit of time killing while Jose gets set up, because I keep flashing my brand new tattoo. Will the camera focus on it? The camera doesn't want to focus on it. Lame. Anyway, I got a new tattoo on Friday the 13th with my partner, Emily. We stood outside of Marion, which we did 2 years ago to get a tattoo that was on my knee. And so we did that again this year. We decided to line up around 8:30 in the morning, and it really wasn't too bad. So we're going to get Jose on here, and we're going to kind of just field some of his questions. Because Jose had kind of been reaching out to me about stuff on walls and things like that. So, we'll just kind of get them on and they had see what they have to say. Hey, how's it going?
All right, it's going well. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, it's nice to finally meet you.
Thanks for the invite. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. And we had kind of been talking through DMs and things like that, but my thumbs cannot match the energy that my mouth can. So I figured just having you on, we'd make more progress that way.
Absolutely.
Do you want to tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I've been an artisan or creative for the past 15 to 20 years. I'm a parent, and I've returned to get my degree. So I'm going to CU Denver, where I'm in the College of Arts and Media, getting my fine arts degree so that I can finish becoming an artist and move away from just artisan, which is,
yeah,
creative on its own.
Yeah, exactly. So what's the motivation? What's the end goal? When that shift happens, what happens when the label changes?
I think that's why I've been bugging you so much.
Okay, totally.
I think that's kind of what this is about because as an artisan, I was able to more or less support myself in waves because of the nature of, being creative. You have waves of good times and bad times.
Yeah.
It's like running your own business.
Exactly.
So what I did is I was like, well, I'll balance it out by getting a degree.
Yep.
And I'm going in to get a degree, and I'm finding out that there is a lot of people that are extremely creative, although there's nowhere for them to network outside of their own networks, their own existing networks, which is their own friends or families or institutions that their friends and families are involved with.
Yep.
And being that I have a history of, I guess, being independent.
Okay.
And I'm like, well, what about these people who are extremely talented and are looking for networks and might be focusing on the wrong, let's say, energies?
Okay.
Where they might be better served in another network or another community that's just as creative, but more understanding to their personalities or their styles and techniques.
Right.
And I think that I try and focus on, I guess, making things more positive and better, improving.
Right. Right. To sort of tear down the gates and sort of get rid of that gatekeeping culture that's sort of inherent to art.
I mean, in a way, I understood where Clifford Stills was coming from.
Yeah.
When he was in the frustration of needing to go through established art communities.
Right.
I'm not talking about necessarily knocking those gates open, although maybe making the cues or the lines move along quicker.
Okay.
Because if you get people that are interested in passing through this gate, but the gate, if they get through, it's going to be like, you're going to get here, and we already know that our way of doing things, not with your techniques or your styles.
Okay.
So maybe you can go to a different community and with support.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yep. Yeah.
So, efficient, not necessarily, forcefully necessarily.
Yeah, it's almost you as the person who's trying to join being objective and in like knowing, okay, this is it. I've kind of checked these boxes off. I kind of belong here. This is progressing me forward. Or like knowing, oh, these check marks aren't getting crossed off the list. Maybe I should reevaluate why I hang out with this group every single week, or why I go to, like, I think another great example would be like life drawing sessions. Or things like that, like around Denver, like knowing if those sort of like communal creative things are actually beneficial to you, or if it's sort of like maybe toxic and like not really meeting your goals. And I think like the big thing for me, like right off the bat, is like having those goals very clear when you start trying to network. So like, what are some of your goals that you have when you look for new networks? Like, how do you evaluate whether something's beneficial or not to you?
Well, I guess you could say that some of us have had the unique opportunities to explore curiosities.
Okay.
And explore different groups and different networks with understanding.
Right.
And with that, I would say that not everyone has that opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Where they have like set goals in mind, and this is the way I was brought up, and this is the way I live, and this is the way I feel most comfortable. They may be okay exactly where they're at.
Right.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is that some of us get knowledge from the curiosity and exploring things and being able to go out there, and as artists, we tend to be able to explore a little bit better.
Yeah.
Not as much find or like you're this person, because artists are inherently creative.
Right.
And inherently able to hopefully explore different socio-economical classes, different culture groups, and be able to present information in a way that's understanding to bring different groups together that may need each other, but have this weird line that's like, if I cross this and I try and come back, then I'm going to get judged. or perceived, or maybe I'll be like, oh, well, I have to be now this technique or this create. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
they start, now I'm stuck in this style, or I'm stuck in this, when it's not true, because as creatives know, there's all different kinds of people everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, you can, in the most surprising places, you'll be like, oh, hey, I do relate to you.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean necessarily that either one of you is in the right spot or in the right place for your understanding, but that doesn't mean that two people shouldn't be together.
Right. Yeah, it's sort of like, it's like sort of this double-edged sword almost, you know? It's like you have this innate curiosity, but then you have this arts training and art education on top of it, which I think what's really interesting about what's happening now in whatever we're experiencing, some might even call it postmodernism or whatever. And I think this is reflected in Denver, is it's a lot more interdisciplinary, right? Like just the conversations I go to and the things that I'm involved in personally, like creatives at Roundish Tables. And like I signed up for Tilt West round table discussions happening, is to, you know, intentionally seek that out and to like stay curious in sort of those regards. And you meet people maybe around the topic, which is nice because then you like get a microbiologist thrown in with it. Or like even in terms of art, I think a lot of artists are starting to identify as interdisciplinary, you know, and like things like social practice art or performance art don't really demand a medium. So I think the shifting is really changing. And I think you'll kind of discover that at UCD, and especially like if you start going to a manual gallery on campus and you know, hop a light rail station over to where I worked at Center for Visual Art, which is MSU Denver's off-campus art gallery. I think you'll start to see that like that thinking is really shifting. And, you know, my peers who are art historians and who are studying art history, we're starting to see that reflected in even the way it's being documented from a historical perspective. I think there's a lot more intersectionality would kind of be the buzzword that comes to mind. Yeah, so I don't think that like even as someone who's trying to participate in that, or like as we talked about, who's maybe interested in facilitating this kind of intersectionality, I wouldn't let that kind of group think inhibit you from starting something. Because what I noticed with Stuff on Walls is like just getting it going will attract people with your mindset, right? Who are going to want that intersectionality and that intentional diversity. And, you know, like that caliber of artist who is thinking like you and who is thinking like me, like is out there, right? And if you still want to like think in terms of you have to use this medium or you have to do this style or you have to be influenced by these people, I kind of personally, I think that's kind of like a bygone way of thinking, you know, and I really did not do that with Stuff on Walls. And I could have easily done that, right? Like each month I could have very easily said, okay, we're going to let these kind of people in and the focus is going to be on this. And this is going to be the kind of music that goes with it. But instead I focused more on the person and like, were they driven to email me? Were they driven to follow up on that email? You know, were they driven to recommend other artists? You know, same with musicians. Like, I didn't really care what you played or how you played it. I cared more about the hustle and the drive, and which is why I'm doing this, you know? So I wouldn't let that thinking inhibit you, you know, like, and I think you'll discover this getting back into academia, right? And like, as you talked about intentionally seeking out curiosity, I think you're talking about more being like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but more being about a facilitator of those who want to critically think and abstract think, right?
Well, I think we're all in thought.
Yeah.
I think you touched on something when you said the era that we're in. Is it postmodern? What is it? Nobody has named it.
Right.
One of my things that I'm trying to conceptualize is, what are we, if we're thinking along the same lines, you know, intersectionality, you're saying it's a buzzword, what does it mean? We're defining it now.
Mm-hmm.
What age is this going to be? Nobody's putting out manifestos anymore because we're digital age.
Yeah.
How are we going to communicate these messages and the ideas that we want to get out there together and in a concise way, so that we're moving in a direction so that, you know, these things of like one person having to carry the burden of being like, oh, I know everything and I'm going to be the creative and I'm going to find the financing and I'm going to find everything.
Yeah.
That goes against, you know, even that buzzword of intersectionality.
Right.
That's not what it's about. Everybody brings something.
Right.
And there's value in it.
Yep.
And I think that's kind of where this is going, is that, I mean, I'm showing up, I'm sitting on my sofa in my living room, blank white wall, but this is what I have to offer.
Right. And this is your manifesto, right? Like, this is
more or less.
Right. And if you were to do this, like I'm doing every single week, you start to notice these same kind of rhetorical points that are unique to you. And again, will drive your community around you. And the more you're talking, like during your classes, the more refined this is going to become.
If you're doing this every week, that frees me up to maybe be invited or do something that's,
Yeah.
And then along with that, I know you've talked about monetizing and being able to support, which is a key thing of, you know, even students that I'm in class with is how do we get through these times as we support, network, do everything, and safely.
Right.
You know, how to get out there into all these communities that are mixing up and they're coming together and everything, and we might know a little bit about them, we might know nothing about them, but how do we make sure everyone is safe before they're brought into situations where they're like, well, I need to do this because I have to support myself.
Yep.
Understand what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, no, totally. So my example with that is like with national production companies that come to Denver and put on exhibitions, right? Once a month is what they're branding them as, or showcases is usually how they get branded, right? And at first, I was just, regardless of my personal experiences, which weren't that great with them, right? Like they usually cost me money and time and energy, and I really wasn't smart and intelligent, and I was also very naive about the business and industry side of it, right? So even after my bad personal experiences, I would just blindly keep those in my pocket and like support anyone who replied to their emails and like who would sign up for these same showcases that I had bad experiences with. I would still support other people who did that, right? And it wasn't until a couple months of like then people also having those negative experiences that I started to recognize that this seems to kind of be a thing, you know, like nobody seems to know how to navigate this. And so that's when I wrote a really negative but constructive review on this production company's Facebook page. And I'll tell you this right now, like at least every 3 months, I'm getting a like or a comment on that review, you know? And so it's things like that. I think it's about shifting the conversation. We spend a lot of time at art openings and art events and art exhibitions, and even in the digital spaces, supporting each other and saying, okay, this is great, but we can also start talking about this cost me money. This made me money. This is working. Like, oh, this curator was a pain in the ass to work with, or this curator had this really interesting idea. I wonder if it would work in a space like this, you know, like it's back to taking your brain and your curiosities and just starting to voice it. Right? Like I firmly believing that there are no stupid questions, because really in Denver, not a lot of people are talking about it, right? Which is why I'm filling this space with the podcast and the video, is because there's a lot of talk about the aesthetics of things, right? And like in the sphere of criticism, there's just talk about the exhibitions as a whole, and only minutely with a couple of artists who are actually examining the economic processes of art is the media picking up on that. I think it's Jonathan Size and Wes Meyer. They're doing this thing like 7,000 Reasons or whatever. It's been this continual art experiment in Denver over a couple months now in different venues where they're exploring different avenues of art economics, and like, what does it mean to give stuff away for free? What does it mean to do auctions? And I think we see this on social media with like giveaways and stuff like that. And so I think it's just being brave about shifting the conversation, right? Like, I kind of know I'm standing out on my own a little bit talking about this and dedicating hours and hours to just business and industry sides of things, but people in your perspective as well are helping shift that. And I think the root of a lot of your questions and a lot of what we're talking about, right, is like, what happens when I do that, Well,
because it is, I commend you because you are doing this.
Yeah.
The only reason why I'm comfortable coming out on camera and being like, okay, I'm going to do this is because you've already done it.
Yeah.
I don't have, and like I said before, now maybe it frees me up to do something else. If we are like-minded in certain senses of being able to say, hey, I've already run through this experience.
Mm-hmm.
I can see how you can get caught on a treadmill or just spinning your wheels, and, you wind up investing more money, and then whatever gets cherry-picked, and, I don't look like a cherry. Although there may be, again, like a different gate where somebody is maybe not inclined to put themselves out there and to do shows or showcases, which, again, takes a lot of bravery to put yourself out there.
Yep.
But they may be willing to, if waters have been tested by people like you, and say, hey, we can do this, and get creative people in touch with you that are creative, that aesthetics are just what you're looking for, and the taste and the styles are, without you having to go through this elaborate setup of looking for a gallery and doing all this. Let us do that. And trust you to invite them, because you should know the artists.
Right.
You should know them already. And this is the thing that you would have over the people that are curating these shows that are just trying to, get talent up there, is the artists.
Right.
And they have a revolving door of artists that they're just like, when they need something, they'll just reach in and they'll pick it.
Yep.
That's cherry picking.
Right.
But if you're looking for somebody's interests, the customer as well as the artist, you're going to tell the customer, look, nurture this relationship. Take care of the artwork. Cherish the artwork. And then the more you look at it, the more you're going to get back from it, because you're going to start to see things that aren't visible to other people.
Right.
You're going to get beyond that level, that surface level of bright colors and flashy this and sparkly that. And then you're going to get into that level of like what it means to be comforted when you're distressed.
Yeah.
What it means to be able to be shared focus, real focus from somebody that understands your style, your taste, your personality, and be like, I feel that this is what you need. Not through a third party, but through somebody that has an interest because they care about art and artists.
Right.
And that's kind of like where the definition is, there's no word for it.
Yeah.
This is where people like us get to make things up.
Right.
We get to create.
Yes.
For creating purposes.
Exactly. And that is a huge motivator and something that wakes me up every day, because I think part of these new art movements now moving forward post-internet is also including the dynamics of the industry, because now the dynamics of the industry are changing just as much as the bodies and movements of artwork, right? And so I think that's something new for us to explore, and I encourage you to explore different sorts of roles when you're, in that safe space or safer space of academia, is to really experiment with that and, to like push yourself and to like build up your body of work as an expert, which I'm learning is just talking, right? Like the more you talk, the more you're an expert, and then like, you'll get all of these cool like soft benefits when you graduate, as well as an art degree, right? Like you'll graduate a little bit more well-rounded. And I'm seeing this in my peers who have like changed their degrees at Metro and things like that. Like when you have this brain and when you have the way that you're thinking going into an art class, you're not just going to be thinking about the like canvas in front of you. You're going to be thinking about the dynamics and how the professor is teaching. You're going to be thinking about your peers' learning styles. What is actually sticking and resonating with them, and what lesson did they miss? You know, and I'm in that position too, where I was in and out of education. And I think going back in really helped it stick a lot more, and was really what motivated me to finish my bachelor's degree. So I really just encourage you. I mean, you're onto something. I can't lie to you. You're onto something, you know. Take that innate curiosity that you have and like put it out there and start, you know, getting on things like this, you know, and start talking more and just like elaborating more in like Instagram captions, and however you communicate, just like start doing it more. Because I mean, you've been a motivation and a push to me. Like I'm sitting here in my brain and I'm like, I got to write this stuff down. Like this is really interesting. And I really like would love to like continue to have you on in multiple forms, whether it's comments or live streams or whatever. But
one thing that I thought about is the space over the mic over your left shoulder where the A crate is.
Yeah.
And over here.
Yeah.
You could use some graphics.
Yeah.
You know, something to put up for the topic of the show, so that if people are just popping on, you know, because I mean, that was one of your first things that when I started messaging you, you're like, I don't want to get off topic.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was like, oh, I didn't realize that it was topic. Because I was just scrolling through, but that's a reality that neither one of us would realize unless we were doing this.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, and the DSLR and the GoPro are capturing this awesome green screen on my other side here. So I've been ideating around that, and I've been doing some Twitch streaming with a friend and like using that open broadcaster stuff. So yeah, there's definitely more of like a newscastery vibe, I think, coming into the future. But the only reason topics came up is because I got feedback from like the very first 30-minute episode, if you'll call it, that it was just one long windy rant, and there was like not even a time to like take a breath and like digest what I had just said. So I'm trying to like have a little bit more subject, have a little bit, you know, I've got some notes now around some things, but I don't want to keep you too long. I want to respect your time. And are we doing okay?
We're doing well. Yeah. I am on kind of pseudo break right now, so I do have somebody waiting for me.
Okay.
Although I would love to see your setup.
Yeah.
And I do thank you, and I do have a lot of ideas for like production cues.
Yeah.
That may come in handy that I've noticed like on different YouTube channels and things like that I follow.
Awesome.
That make it easier for people, creative people, to kind of figure out like if they're going to be going through things number-wise, time-wise, like I would love to be like, here's the key information I need. Yeah. I can add a hit to you. I can come in and, you know, click. You get the numbers and I get the information. And so maybe soon we can figure stuff out like that. But I do appreciate
to like building this relationship. I think this is just the start.
Great, Curtis. Well, you have a good rest of the show, and I'll catch up with you.
Thanks so much. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. That was great. I just wanted to extend an invitation to Jose to get on here and contribute some things. Oh, geez. Yeah, that gain was nuts. Yeah, so I just wanted to have Jose on, give him the opportunity to kind of contribute some thoughts. Like I said in the interview that you guys can see on the video recap, because I don't know how well the audio captured. We just did it through Instagram Live real quick. My thumbs do not work as well as my mouth. So we were talking about some complex subjects through Instagram DM, and I just wanted to have him on real quick to just kind of digest some things and talk and honestly just start a relationship, because I'm really good at kind of picking up those things, and I could tell that their brain was thinking about similar things but from a different angle, and so it was really exciting to have that. Let me get a drink of water real quick, and I want to address Paul's comment, which is from that little quick interview. Paul, is a great friend, as an acquaintance through the art industry, and so yeah, I just wanted to talk about Paul's comment a little bit relating to production companies in Denver. Okay, so during my interview with Jose, the subject of production companies came up. And if you're not familiar, there are several production companies that come to Denver on a monthly, bi-monthly, annual, whatever you have it, basis. And these production companies, they put on things that are usually labeled as showcases. And there are several in Denver. I'm not going to name any names because personally I've had some negative experiences with these production companies, but part of that negative experience was my own naivety around what these things are. And so I just wanted to dissect Paul's comment from the Instagram live stream. Paul said, things like insert production company name are horrible scams. Now, the thing is like, that is my quick judgment too. My quick judgment of most production companies is that it is a scam designed to generate revenue. But you remove the word scam and you replace it with business, and it's a business that's supposed to generate income, right? Which is what any business should do. It's what you as an independent creator should be doing. It's what you as an artist should be doing, is generating an income. So we can't necessarily be upset at these production companies for figuring out one way to generate income off the arts industry. Now, the way they go about it is a topic of debate and discussion. So my advice around production companies is this: know what you're getting into, do a spreadsheet, do a list, know your costs, write them down in red pen, know all of your costs first and how much in the red you're going to be going into these production events. Because I'll break it to you right now, there is no way to go into a production event with 0 on your spreadsheet or being your spreadsheet in the black, right? There's no way to go into a production event not spending any money, right? And not being in debt in one form or another. The production company that I have a history with, you had to sell X amount of tickets to pay, I'll say, or alleviate the cost of your exhibition space, right? You had to sell tickets to pay for your space. That's the way that this production company operated. Another production company that I worked with, you just paid up front, right? Like you just paid per piece, and there were price breaks if you inserted, or there was price breaks if you, there was a price break if you had more than one piece, or there were several price breaks depending on the number of pieces that you paid for in this exhibition. Or in this showcase, I'll say it wasn't really an exhibition from my background. So in this showcase, you would just pay per piece, and then they were hung sort of willy-nilly without a game plan on a large accordion wall that ran all the way through the venue, right? It was very hard to decipher your work. The readability was an issue, things like that. So they're not necessarily scams because they do their job, right? And which means we have to do our due diligence as creatives. So again, back to this thread. You need to write down all of your expenses in red and know how much this is going to cost you. How much are those ticket sales going to cost you? How much is your gas going to cost you? If you were to pay yourself $10 to $15 an hour, how many hours worth of pay is this to stand at your own booth, right? Like, you need to be taking into consideration all of these things. Like, take into consideration all of that, right? Like, what are the true expenses going into this? And evaluate that before you quick fire off an email that says, yes, I'm in, yes, I'm down. Right? Then the other thing I encourage you doing, like, is if you get invited by these production companies, is read their reviews, both 5-star reviews and 1-star reviews. Look into how this production company operates in other cities, right? Like, if we're here in Denver, I would recommend seeing if the production company who's reaching out to you operates in Las Vegas or operates in Salt Lake City, or, you know, markets like that, maybe into Texas or California or Phoenix, Arizona. You know, like, see what their reputation is in other cities in the Southwest. You know, like, is Denver a fluke and we're getting 5-star reviews because we have a great local crew, and like, yeah, actually you should sign up because our local producer is amazing and like they have a great team of volunteers? Or is this kind of a trend, and in the region there seems to be like not great things happening, and maybe you should like consider reevaluating your option? So they're not scams, right? Like, these production companies are not scams. It's just up to us as creatives to evaluate what we're going into, right? Like, how much debt is it going to cost us? What historically does this look like? Do people enjoy doing this? Do they not enjoy doing this? Like, and sort of redefining profitable. So your end game at these exhibitions and at these showcases might not be selling a ton of work. Or I'll clarify and expand on that. It might not be selling a ton of high price point artwork, right? What I had success with at the production company that I did once I tuned in was I had a lot of success selling $5 prints. Now, let me break this down for you. This was when I was doing mobile editing. So I was cranking out graphics on my iPhone every single day, right? Like, I was just doing a little edit all on my phone, posting it to Instagram, making it look cool and getting it out to the world. So then what I started to do for Raw is I actually just found like different websites or different, at one point I was even using like Walgreens photos just to crank out little square prints of my Instagram posts. And I was selling those for $5. And the margins were amazing because photo print was only costing me like $1 or less. And that's kind of why I went through multiple online vendors, is I would usually do whatever promo deal or coupon code I could get my hands on for that production company, and then just print that and basically never use it again because it gets expensive after the first promo. And that's when I landed like on just simply like on Walgreens photo, right? Like 1-to-1 ratio, printing the digital file, quick turnaround. I could even do it same day of the showcase if I wanted to. That was a bad habit, but that's where I had success. So these showcases aren't scams. These showcases are an opportunity, but they're not going to be what you think they are if your end game is selling as much money as you invested in that showcase. I tend to think that like showcases and craft fairs aren't necessarily like profit generating centers right off the bat. Like, they are something that you have to evaluate and work with over time to like figure out what success looks like and what profitability looks like in those places, you know. And Emily has a great point here on the Instagram live feed. So let's get into that. Continuing this conversation of evaluating showcases and evaluating craft fairs. Emily has a great comment in saying, it's also important to evaluate audience. What might work for someone else might not work for you. And this is the truth. So I lurk on a couple crafting Facebook groups where crafters who are hardcore into running the circuits talk about different producers and different events. And one of the main topics of conversation in these Facebook groups is exactly this, is the audience, right? Like, what kind of people are there? Not just sheer numbers, but now, right, we're getting into sort of this marketing kind of thing, not just sheer numbers, like how many people were through that fair that weekend, but what kind of people were there that weekend, you know? Were they the spending kind of demographic? Were they the look then spend kind of demographic? You know, at Zine Fest, a lot of what we saw was like the first pass was just taking it all in, making some decisions, doing some evaluations. You know, like they were thinking about their budget and how much they could get with the $20 in their pocket. Same thing applies to these showcases and these craft fairs. Are people intoxicated? Is alcohol encouraged? Are there lots of bars? Like, that's an influence, you know, like who's going to be there? Is it going to be a bunch of people who look exactly like you, you know? And so with Stuff on Walls, that was good for networking, right? Like in terms of networking, it was great that we were pulling an audience that looked like the artists, right? In terms of in terms of age, race, ethnicity, levels of diverse income, right? Like, and where you are in terms of income and evaluation, in terms of experience and education, like diversity on multiple facets. So it was great for that. But what it wasn't good for was selling art, right? Like constant dissatisfaction with the amount of art being sold at the end of the night. And that's because like people like me and my age and my income bracket and the lifestyle that I'm living don't have a lot of disposable income, or aren't disposing of that income on art, right? And it was very easy for people my age and at Stuff on Walls to shell over money for beer and wanting to do that, or to go downstairs to the restaurant. But it was a little bit harder to sell something over the $20 price point with people who looked like the artists that we were booking. And so you've got to evaluate that when you're looking at these showcases as well. So Paul, I really do appreciate your comment because it started this conversation, but I just hope that like you are encouraged to kind of reevaluate your experiences with it. And I know you're kind of in a different position as an artist, you know, having representation and having a following. So I would love to like hear your experiences with that. And if you have any firsthand experiences with the showcase side of things. As an event producer and as someone who has like put those things on and really was like motivated by those production companies to start Stuff on Walls, I can't really knock them, right? Like I really fault my own naivety when I was doing them, and it was a learning experience, and like you have to count it as that. And just like know that there's maybe different options to getting out there, and just know that like if a production company is sending you an email or sending you an Instagram DM, like think about the sheer amount of numbers that they have to send that out to just to get enough yeses to produce a showcase, right? So I want to say in my days, they maybe had 50 artists. Maybe that's a good gauge. Production company. So you're easily going to have to say, I mean, as an event producer who's dealt with trying to find artists, triple that, right? So you're talking to 150 artists, you're messaging 150 creative people, you have teams of interns, and like you're dedicating entire days. Like I would dedicate an entire work day just to like having the emotional energy to like deal with all of those messages across all of those platforms, to deal with all the rejections, to figure out what to do with the yeses once they had said yes. So things like that. So from the event side, like it's hard, it's difficult too, and they go through a lot of things. And so, yeah, like you kind of do have to be sleazy if you consistently want to get these done every month. Like you have to sacrifice things. What I think sucks is like, they message me now like I'm a brand new person, right? Like they have no idea I have a history with this company. And I don't know why they don't know that. Like, why aren't you keeping track of who you've messaged in the past? You know, why is it like every couple of months I'm getting an invitation to these events, and I have a history of being outspoken against these events, and I have a history of doing these events? Like, why don't you have some kind of file somewhere that says like this guy has left a 1-star review and like has done this in the past? You know, so it's, you have to like realize that these are monsters and machines and like companies that are meant to generate income, right? Like a showcase needs to make money. Yeah. And if we're going to, let me just unpack this real quick on how they make money, right? They don't really make money off of you, right? Like they don't necessarily make money off of the artist. Well, they do. So here's how these production companies, I think here's how a lot of production companies make money. So a way that a production company makes money is, right, they find a venue. Now, I got 2 minutes remaining, so I'm not going to get into that. That's for another episode. I'd like to thank Emily and Paul for contributing to today's live stream. I'd also like to thank Jose, aka JPen II, for hopping on and doing an interview. Not really an interview, it was just a conversation. I was just getting to know someone, right? Like, I just wanted to get to know someone, and just know that that opportunity exists for you as well. If you want to keep following the live streams, hop over to my YouTube. I think it's just Curtis Tucker. I'll figure out how to get you guys a link or something, but like, find me on YouTube. I'm just going to continue live streaming there. Instagram doesn't like having me do multiple live streams in a day. It doesn't feed them out to anyone. So what's the point? I think I'm just going to stick with the one live stream for about the first hour of the podcast right here on Instagram. You can tweet me at Curtis_podcast. You can find me on Instagram at Curtis. And you can find me on YouTube. I think it's just Curtis Tucker. We're going to have to get that figured out. Today was my first day doing YouTube live streaming, so I'm just going to keep it running on there because nobody was tuning in on Facebook, and I kind of want to build a YouTube audience, and so I'm going to have a lot of video recap of these live streams and things like that rolling out in the future. I've been pairing my GoPro and my DSLR angles to kind of make 10-minute recap videos, so be looking forward to that in the future. And if you're not already listening, please listen to Creative Crunch, anchor.fm/Creative Crunch. You can leave me an audio message. You can leave me applause. You can favorite me. You can catch up onto all the conversations that we've been having and see what all of these live streams are getting turned into. If you want to be a guest, shoot me a DM. I got 8 seconds remaining. So thank you everyone for tuning in today on Instagram. Continue to watch me. Continue to love and support. Thanks. Bye. Okay, where could I save? At one point, I was able to save the live streams. Hey, YouTube, let me talk to you guys real quick. Thanks to everyone watching on YouTube today. As I move the pop filter around. Thanks to everyone watching on YouTube today. I didn't even get into any of the content that I wanted to talk about, but I've already been here an hour, so we're just going to keep it. Excuse me. I get all nervous. Okay, I'm going to move things. I'm moving things. I don't like that camera angle anymore. Okay. Whoa. This is a sketchy tripod. Okay, bring this leg back up. Do this. Do that. Tighten this. Tighten that. Bring that down a little bit. Okay, what if I do something like this? But then I put it over here. Well, if you ask me, maybe a slight tilt to get me in there. Oh, yeah. Okay. This is good. Okay. So just a little bit. What does this look like? And this gives me good audio still, and I can see my notes. Okay. We're getting close. We're getting really close to finding a perfect angle for this DSLR. Okay. I'm getting it. I'm getting it. So if we do something like this, but we shift it. Okay, so what if we do something like that? Then we have this huge green screen area that I think I could key some stuff with. Okay. Okay, am I crooked? I think I'm crooked a little bit. How's that? I don't think it's super noticeable. Good headroom. Oh, that's going to be interesting. Okay, so I think we found a really good angle for the DSLR finally. I'm getting a nice swatch of like green screen ability here. So yeah, I might be trying that in some of the video recaps in the future. I don't know if my computer can handle that though. Yikes. Let's just do this real quick. I could go live on Twitter. Okay. Twitter. Okay, so I think we'll do that in a minute here. Okay, so let's make that stop recording for a second. All right, what's going on YouTube? I got a couple minutes just to talk to you guys. I'm going to switch the GoPro up here and just put it on its little stand to guarantee some good pictures. How do you share your YouTube profile? My channel. Share. More. Facebook. Except is it going to do it? My time frame. Okay. So cancel. Discard. Okay. Share. Copy link. Facebook. Okay. Let's do this too. Okay. Facebook pages. Okay. I'll be streaming on YouTube until 3 p.m. today. Exclamation mark. Tune in and let me know what you think. Period. Okay. YouTube channel done. Link paste done. Okay. Hey, Instagram, if you want to keep watching, I put the YouTube link in my bio. Go click the link in my bio. I'm streaming on YouTube for the rest of the day until 3 p.m. Yeah, so go do that right now. Thanks for watching, but go to YouTube. Okay. Live on YouTube. Where am I live? All right, YouTube, we are getting the audio file melted down. We are getting everything figured out. First hour underway. We got two more, roughly two more. I'm here till 3. Man, somebody smashed a goldfish on the carpet here. That's gross. Okay, fire these back up. Okay. I really don't want to move this. Okay. All right. Looks like I only get 13 more minutes out of that. Recording Creative Crunch podcast. Why can't I do it? Video stream. Broadcast creation failed. I'm on the Wi-Fi. Why don't you like that? Settings. Hotspot. Twitter. There we go. Recording more Creative Crunch podcast episodes from the bunker. Okay, hey Twitter, welcome to the live stream. Now I'm going to switch over to Twitter, and I'm live streaming on YouTube. I've been live streaming on YouTube the whole time. I have the cameras running again, and we have not gotten into a single topic. So let's see, file, I'll go here, file, new, save, desktop, sure. We'll call this project. Okay. I should have done this beforehand. Voice. Okay. Let's get into this. I think we can move that again. Oh, that's annoying. Right. There. I guess it's only for a couple minutes. Okay. Welcome to Creative Crunch. I'm your host, Curtis Merker. What's up, everyone? Welcome to Creative Crunch. I'm your host, Curtis Tucker, and today we're going to talk about the question sticker that got added to Instagram. We're going to be talking about what the heck is going on with the Institute of Art. That was bad. Okay. What's up, everyone? Welcome to Creative Crunch. I'm your host, Curtis Tucker, and today we're going to be talking about the new sticker for questions on Instagram. We're also going to be talking about what the heck is going on with the Art Institute. If you've been listening, last episode has an interview with Bridget Gallery, and I think the one before that, if I didn't work some editing magic, has the one with Creatos, an Art Institute employee and student from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Bridget Gallery just graduated from the location here in Denver, so that episode has those interviews, and then I would kind of want to do an update, and I want to do some more research. And then lastly, I get into your guys' polls. Every weekend on my Instagram at Curtis, I kind of poll people. I ask my followers about what's going on in the art industry and just kind of gauge, do some firsthand research, get some temperature readings on some subjects and see what kind of might be interesting. So I thought we would talk about that, talk about your guys' Instagram polls, and that should get us through the first episode. A quick shout out to everyone watching on the live streams. I've kind of been doing it everywhere. Today, I tried YouTube for the first time. I also seem to be catching 1 hour on Instagram until their timer runs me out, and then I move it over to Twitter. The Facebook live streams weren't doing too hot, but maybe that's a me problem. Maybe I need to look at that. Maybe I need to look at how streams get out. But for today's recording session, I thought we would mix it up. Do it on YouTube because I'm trying to do some more YouTube content. So thanks for watching on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, I appreciate it. If you're not, go check my channel out and watch some of the recap videos. Show me some love. Maybe I've tried some things out with a green screen by the time you're hearing that. Maybe I got brave. Go check it out. Let me know what you think. Leave some likes, smash that bell, hit subscribe. Oh, left my water all the way over there. Hey, if you're listening to Creative Crunch on Anchor FM right now, when you're done, leave me an audio message. Let me know what you think. I'd really appreciate it, and it might even get worked into a future episode. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, leave me some stars. Leave me a review. Do you like what you're hearing? Do you not like what you're hearing? Either way, it helps me improve Creative Crunch. Creative Crunch is also available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and several other platforms. So tell your friends to tune in wherever they listen. Angle changes. Angle changes. All right. Let's get into this a little bit. I thought that this would be fun to talk about today. What is stock? What is the stock market? Are you going to let me onto the internet? Thank you. And yeah, I wanted to pull up some publicly traded social media companies because we talked about that last time. And then, like, just to be fair and to be a little futuristic, I thought I would pull up some cryptocurrency values and see what that's like these days. So I'm getting those pulled up. The reason I'm talking about this is because on the last recording session, I just listed Facebook's stock value because we were talking about Instagram and a lot of the features that Instagram was rolling out. And so I thought it would be appropriate to talk about their parent company, which is Facebook. And since Facebook is publicly traded, they have a stock value, and a stock value is like a metric and is a gauge on how things are going. It's not definitive, right? It's not the thing, but it's just one thing. It's just one thing to have. So I thought we would kind of elaborate a little bit on that in today's episode. And I just pulled up some quick, Google research on stock and the stock market, because I kind of know what it is, right? Don't we all? We all kind of know what it is. It shows up at the end of the news, and you might hear rumors or whispers about it. But as creatives, I don't know if we hold it so much value. So I thought it would be interesting to just sprinkle this into the conversation. Okay. Yeah, this is okay. So again, stocks are for publicly traded corporations, and they usually just start out with a few shareholders. This website is saying, this is from howthemarketworks.com. Haven't fact checked it. Seems pretty bland though, so I think it's pretty trustworthy. So a corporation might start off with 100,000 shares of stock to begin with, and you might have your first 5 employees put some money in and they get stock in return. So that's usually how that works. And then as they grow, stock is a way for corporations to generate capital, to launch new products, to launch new services, to get something off the ground. So as a corporation grows, they can turn to their stocks and release some of those. Don't even ask me how that works. Yeah, somehow you buy and sell stocks. If you're a stock person, if you do day trading, even if you have an E-Trade portfolio, I'd love to have you on to Creative Crunch to kind of explain stocks to us, but way better than I can. So if you know somebody, leave an audio message on anchor.fm/Creative Crunch, or just DM me wherever you follow me on Twitter or Instagram. I would love to have someone in the financial sector really kind of just explain what stocks are way better than my Google research can. I would really appreciate that. Because I think I'm going to keep coming back to stocks as a ticker, as a thing, as a gauge, as a metric to see what's going on in the bubble of social media, publicly traded companies. Yeah, there's stock markets all over the world, yada, yada, yada. This is coming from NASDAQ.com, which is a stock market. So I might read that a little bit more and do some more research onto it. Okay, so this is from NASDAQ. So the New York Stock Exchange, which I think most of us are familiar with, is where the price of stocks where the price of the stocks that make up the indexes are set. Okay. or rather arrived at. So the stock exchange is what determines the price of the stock and the index of the stock. Okay, you can use a broker to buy and sell, yada, yada, yada. Lots of things influence the stock market. So again, if you're an expert, if you know anything about stocks, because clearly I know nothing other than how to read them and find websites that talk about them, I'd love to have you on Creative Crunch, because I think I'm going to use this as a metric moving forward. I think it's important to kind of gauge where things are at. So let's start gauging things. I found this cool website called investsnips.com. And they have a list of publicly traded social media companies, and then they have like a live ticker next to it. So I think this is kind of what I'll keep referring to unless I can find a better stock ticker. But yeah, let's just kind of go down this. So these are clearly listed. I don't know how these are listed. So we're taking a look at the publicly traded social media stocks on InvestSnips according to their ticker and according to like their little research. So the first one they list is Alphabet Inc., which is traded under GOOG. So this is Google Plus in addition to several of their other assets. And as of today, as of recording this, they've had like a negative change, but their last stock value was over $1,000 a share. And then moving on to Facebook, which is just FB. This is why I referenced this last time, because the Facebook stock is Facebook, Instagram, Messenger, and WhatsApp. So it's kind of an indicator on how that cluster is doing. And they're kind of changing. They're not too negative as of recording this, but each share is at a little over $200 at $207.21, which I don't think is much of a change since last time. So Facebook and their assets are holding pretty steady. What's really interesting then is this one called Renring Inc. I'm going to have to Google that. Reading comprehension ain't so good, folks. So this is a Chinese social networking platform and an online game center. So again, this is something that fascinates me that I don't understand, right? Like the rise of just the East in general, and like China and Asia, right? Like Taiwan, Taipei, the Philippines, right? Like just blowing up. And I really think like in terms of cultural influence, and now obviously as we can see in terms of social media influence, right? Like being publicly traded now and like being a Chinese social networking platform and an online game center, I think will be really interesting to watch that one. That'll be one to watch. Twitter's doing pretty good, $44 a share. Wow. I might be buying some Twitter stock if I ever get a job. So when I get a job that has a salary, I'm definitely going to be probably buying some Twitter stock. And it looks like Yelp stock is pretty affordable at like $40 a share. Oh, that's that online Zynga, that Facebook gaming company. Yeah, they're only at like $4 a share. Yeah, so Facebook games don't seem to be popping too much, and it doesn't look like they did a good job of adapting to apps or things like that. I don't know. Is anybody still playing Farmville? How many people playing Zynga Casino out there, or Words with Friends? Yeah, so maybe it's just indicating the decline of that. So I thought it would be interesting to kind of just pull that up. And then in all fairness, right, like we're trying to be fair. We're not trying to be fake news here on Creative Crunch. I thought I would pull up coinmarketcap.com, which is sort of a stock ticker for cryptocurrencies. Because I downloaded the Cash app recently. I'm very interested in getting a Cash card, and I'm very interested in sort of taking money in on Cash as a way to invest in Bitcoin. I think that's an interesting point of their user interface, is that you can kind of take the things that you take as payment and turn them into Bitcoin. So I think that would be fun to experiment with as an art entrepreneur and in the art industry, using Cash App to take things on, and then you also have the cash card, and then now you can turn it into Bitcoin. So since we talked about stocks, I figure we talk about cryptocurrencies a little bit. So obviously Bitcoin is holding strong at number one. They have a huge market cap, and the price of one Bitcoin is at over $6,000. A lot of talk and trending things that I've been seeing on Reddit through the little bit of following that I do is adaptation is really starting to catch on. And like small businesses are thinking on how they can take Bitcoin now and sort of avoid credit card processing fees and things like that. So I think it'll be really interesting to see the adaptation of Bitcoin take off. And just to be like thinking about that as creatives, I know my coworker Danielle, who was interviewed on here, listed one of their artwork installations as being the market value of one Bitcoin. So that was really interesting. I don't think anybody pulled the trigger on it, but I think it's just interesting to be experimenting with economics in the art industry as well. So how can Bitcoin play a role in your creative crunch? I would love to hear that in audio messages or DMs or whatever. Just let me know. And then you have Ethereum holding in at number two. And what's interesting about that is the gap in between the price of Bitcoin and the price of Ethereum. So Ethereum is just at over $400 for a coin. Lots of positive changes. It seems like cryptocurrencies in general are getting out of a slump. So if you know anything about crypto, we'd love to have you on. I'd love to have you on Creative Crunch, maybe on at the same time as I have somebody on talking about stocks. I know it's not exactly the most creative thing, and it might not fit the scope 100%, but money influences you guys, right? Like money should influence your creative hustle in one way or another. And so keeping an eye on stock and seeing what is changing in terms of the social media landscape, not only in terms of like what users are doing and like how users are responding to things, but also, distracted by a text message. Sorry. Okay, so what was I saying? So it's important to kind of keep track of stocks, I think, because it's an indicator for social media platforms and what they're doing and what the companies behind them are doing. I think a lot of the focus usually is on creative usage and like how people are using the apps. And I think stocks can be a nice indicator or a nice way to show a tick or a change in that on the financial side. And so I'm interested in learning more about that. And like in terms of cryptocurrency, maybe it's a way you take money. I don't know. I'd love to like hear your thoughts on it. I thought it'd be something just fun to like dig up and talk about for a minute, since I just like arbitrarily listed the stock of Facebook and another one. I kind of wanted to be a little bit more journalistic and a little bit more holistic in the perspective that I bring to you. So I thought I would expand on that. And then expanding on this would be to have an expert on. If you know anything about crypto or you know anything about the stock markets, and you want to talk about that and what that might look like in terms of the creative industries and what the creative industries can be doing, please let me know. Please get at me. Would love to have you on to talk about that kind of stuff. But let's kind of bring things back. Let me give you a minute. Let me give you a break. Give you a little thinking time. That was one of the criticisms I got, feedback I got, constructive criticisms I got, was I talk a lot and I just go and I just gas pedal. And so I figure I should chill out for a second. Give you guys a minute. Stock is crazy. Crypto is crazy. Looking forward to talking about it. The next thing I want to get into, after you've had some time to think about stocks and cryptocurrency, is the new sticker on Instagram. Have you seen it? Have you used it? If you follow me, you've seen me use it. And if I follow you, I've seen you use it. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about questions. You can now ask full-blown questions on Instagram. And guess what? Oh, people can write you full-blown answers. So I think that's really interesting. And right out of the gate, as a lot of people did, they just asked for questions, right? I thought stock crypto. Where's the Instagram thing? Instant. Okay. So right off the bat with the new questions sticker, I noticed a lot of you that I'm following out there and paying attention to. I noticed a lot of you just like asking for anything, and just kind of doing a little AMA, Q&A, whatever you want to call it. And I think that's really interesting. Personally, my very first attempt was kind of I revamped it, and I'm starting to use question stickers now in my polls over the weekend to kind of see what people are interested in, what's top of mind, what you've got going on in your brain. So Instagram stickers are pretty interesting. And before I go full into this, I want to change the card on my camera. Thank you to everyone who's tuning in on Twitter and who's tuning in on YouTube. I just got to change my camera card real quick because I'm a one-person productions company here. I run my own cameras. I record my own operating stuff. I record my own audio. I film my own footage. And so that means you kind of got to take a break from talking to switch out the card every now and then. And I think this is relevant stuff. I think you guys like hearing about Instagram and their new feature, so I want to capture that on footage besides a live stream. Okay. Garbage. Okay. How's that? Is that pretty similar? I would have to say that's pretty similar today. Yeah, because I'm right here. Okay, that seems to be working. That seems to be working. Okay, so we're back. And we're talking about the questions sticker on Instagram. I pulled up their little PR release because I think it's not interesting in terms of talking about the feature. When I think about in terms of Instagram's press releases, what's interesting to kind of take note of is the language that they use around the rolling out these new features, because as a communications person and as a marketer, I think that language, if we unpack that a little bit, kind of shows the intent of these features and maybe what it's responding to and maybe what it's trying to get us as users to do in the future and how it's trying to shift our behaviors on the application. So the questions sticker was released on July 10th, as a lot of you know, since you have been using it. I applaud you for using it. And this is to start, as Instagram is saying in their press release, it's a fun new way to start conversations with your friends so you can get to know each other better. Right? I think it's very apparent through things like video chat and through stickers and just stories in general that Instagram is really making some kind of shift and kind of motion. Instagram is making some kind of shift or responding to something. Maybe people were feeling disengaged. Maybe they're just riding an increased wave of engagement and they're just doing a great job of responding to how consumers are interacting with their application and what we are doing as creatives to publish content and push things out there and how we're wanting to interact with our audiences that we're building. So I think it's a great tool if used properly to kind of push things. So what else is cool about this question sticker is then that the answers that people give you, you can put on your story and you can respond to them. And it's really an interesting way to create a dialogue. And this is available as part of version 52 on iOS and Android. I highly encourage that you check it out and kind of give it a use. I made some notes on it here that I think I wanted to talk about. Yeah, I think one thing moving forward with questions would be to the question stick. I think one thing moving forward on the It's hard when your brain goes and your mouth can't keep up. So I think one important thing to think about when using the question sticker on Instagram stories is, what are you asking and how are you asking, right? I think what was really interesting is just right off the bat, a lot of people just put it on there and said, ask me anything. And they were answering all sorts of questions. And I think as time develops, people will start thinking about what they're asking. And then after that, I think it's really important to think about how you're asking things, right? Right off the bat, I think one of mine failed was I was really just honestly looking to be reaffirmed by my own opinion. And that's not like healthy at all, or it's not really like a great way to be using the tool either. Like, what are you trying to get at? If you have an answer in mind and you are really kind of just fishing for that answer, are you really utilizing the questions sticker to its fullest potential? And really, like, how are you asking this question? Like, is the way that you're asking the question the best way to ask the question? Maybe you need to ask the question a different way. Maybe you just need to ask yourself the question or ask people close to you the question different ways, and just kind of think about what kind of questions you're putting through on this sticker. Is it so that your opinion can be reaffirmed, and so that you can kind of get affirmations on your thoughts and thinkings around something? Or are you trying to discover a new perspective? I think that's the important thing to keep in mind with question stickers, is now that you have this tool for communication and conversation, how are you going to facilitate that conversation? Because you are the facilitator when you're asking the question, right? And I also think it's important to be mindful in your responses to these questions and to really not gloss them over. Like, the amount of skips that I'm seeing on question stickers on my story or on polls or things of that nature is just really discouraging, and I try to negate it. But if you're actively consuming stories and you see a question or a poll come up from an account that you want to have a relationship with, which I'm assuming you should since you're following them and watching their story, take the time to gather the emotional energy to sort of come up with a meaningful response. Like, have access to or with, or have an audience with otherwise, right? Like, question stickers and polls and things like that are your opportunity to create that, right? And to inform you as a creative, right? Like, a questions sticker and a poll is a way to inform you, right? Back to like not being just reaffirmed, but you need to inform yourself as a creative. And I think this is a great way to gather perspectives from people in your following and from people in your community that you're interested in engaging with. Like, this is a great way for you to start a dialogue and to really start a two-way street that is not dependent on a physical space, right? It's not dependent on you being at an exhibition. It's not dependent on you being at the right place at the right time, right? Like, this conversation can just happen. So yeah, I really just hope that you start doing that more. And when you answer more questions and when you get engaged in polls and things like that, and when you're doing the sliders on Instagram stories, you're actually increasing your credibility and you're becoming an expert. Whether you know it or not, one of the cool side effects and soft benefits of being a creative person is you can also become this expert. Ooh, right? Like, every time there's a TED Talk, it's an expert, right? Like, we're all mystified and we all love listening to experts. So answering back, being engaged on stories, DMing people, tweeting, communicating through podcasts, through videos, through interviews helps increase your credibility. And I think questions is an easy way to just start doing that. I would love your feedback on Instagram at Curtis. I'm doing polls and questions every weekend before the live streams on Monday at noon. And if you want to tweet me, send me a DM at Curtis_podcast. If you have an article or another tweet that you think I should be reading, I'm kind of new to the platform and I'm really kind of just trying to be customer service oriented with it and really engage with people as much as I can on that. So please just like tweet me at Curtis_podcast. And if you're listening on anchor.fm and something has got you thinking, leave me an audio message. Get at me. I think you can do up to a minute long. You can send me multiple ones, whatever you want to do. Just send me a little audio message. And if your thought's longer than that, send me a DM and we can do an interview. You can co-host a live stream, whatever you want to do. Okay. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed our little break there. I've been experimenting with little song clippets, little transitions, trying to break up the episode a little bit more. One of the creative solutions and feedbacks that I got was that I just kind of gas pedal it way too much and I just talk and talk and talk and talk. And I think that can be really daunting to listen to one voice for 40 minutes straight. So I'm trying to do a better job of like breaking these audio files up into little snippets, doing a little bit more effort on Anchor, working in some of their transitions. I have a little theme called Rhodes Jam. You probably heard it at the beginning of the episode. And I've been trying to maybe consider working that into the episode somewhere as well. But yeah, just kind of trying to break it up, give your brain a break from the heavy to the light, and just kind of give you some time to digest things a little bit more. I think that was a great constructive criticism, which I'm always open to, especially from other content creators. I really value the opinions of people who are doing and not just saying. So yeah, that feedback came from another podcaster and another content creator here in Denver, and I just really appreciated it. So I'm trying to break up the audio files a little bit more, do a little bit more fluff talking in between things, and not just trying to like scare you with information all the time that you can't digest. Yeah, so getting into this, we've kind of been having a multi-part series, if you've been following the podcast, on what's going on with the Art Institute. So a lot has been happening with the Art Institute, and a lot has been happening with the parent company of the Art Institute, whose name I have down here lower in my notes for the recap. But I thought I would just kind of do a recap of what's been going on. And I need to do a lot more research because the more opinions I get on this and the more interviews I do on it, the more questions I have. So I'm discovering a lot about the Art Institute along with you guys. I'm learning with you about this. So the Art Institute is a system of for-profit art colleges owned by Dream Center Education Holdings, which is a Pentecostal nonprofit. At its height, there were greater than 50 campuses, and now that's changed drastically with decreased enrollment and a shift in attitudes towards for-profit education. Even the location in downtown Denver at 12th and Lincoln is going to be closing by the end of the year. So the previous parent company, EDMC, or the Education Management Corporation, was actually delisted from NASDAQ in 2014 when its stock was valued at less than 1 cent a share. Quickly, what happened after that is you saw the transition of the Art Institute into the Dream Center Education Holdings nonprofit status. And then there has been some buzz around what they were going to do, and that is really where my curiosity lies. Why would a Pentecostal nonprofit get involved in art education? Why would they start acquiring other educational institutions and brands? And then after acquiring these institutions, why would they quickly start closing down locations, doing teach outs and things like that of that nature? So if you listened on previous episodes, I had a quick audio interview with Creatos, who was an employee and student at the Fort Lauderdale location of the Art Institute. Just wanted to get their gut feelings because they were the fastest person to get back to me on Twitter. And then I think either in that episode or the episode after that, I haven't quite worked my editing magic yet. I also have an extensive interview with Bridget Gallery, who is a recent grad from the Art Institute Denver location. And really her firsthand accounts and like what she saw and like the indicators she received was very interesting. So that kind of gets you guys all kind of caught up on that. And I just wanted to talk about it a little bit more. I haven't done massive amounts of research, and I do need to do more on it, especially on like the Pentecostal faith and why they would be interested in acquiring educational assets. One thing that came up in discussing this with family and friends was Scientology and sort of the series that Leah Remini did on Scientology, and how Scientologists and the Scientology organization launder money through real estate acquisitions. So what they did is they have an influx of donations from Scientologists, and one way they kind of keep the IRS at bay is they buy massive amounts of real estate internationally throughout the globe. And often some of these buildings were even sitting empty, right? Like they would just put up a Scientologist sign and then they would leave it, right? Like, and so it's so interesting. Or they would just put really obscure things in there and they would put 2 people to work there. And so in talking about this acquisition, the Art Institute, having over 50 locations nationwide, is holding a lot of real estate, is holding a lot of physical buildings. And the one in Denver is at 12th and Lincoln, right in the heart of the city, like with its own parking structure, multiple stories, right? Like it's a nice building. And I think that was an interesting facet and an interesting train of thought that my family and friends have that I'm kind of really interested in exploring and maybe doing some of my research. And I wasn't able to dedicate enough time to it to thoroughly like go into this, but I wanted to give you guys another update because every time I Google this, I'm finding something new out about either the parent company, about the Art Institute, things like that. And so what I was able to pull up today was the Dream Center Education Holdings LLC press releases website. Okay. Now, if you're familiar with the concept of a press release, what a press release is notifying the press and the public at large about what's going on in your company, right? So press releases are usually around big products. At the gallery I work at, we do a press release for every exhibition. A press release is a way to notify the world what's going on at your company, at your gallery, at your creative thing, whatever you're doing, right? That's what they're supposed to be. Move the GoPro. So you would think that with this definition of a press release, that the Dream Center Education Holdings Company, LLC, would be releasing some press releases around these closures and these teach outs and this hype that's happening in the Twitter sphere and the media realms, around this. You think that they would be talking for themselves and releasing some press releases to sort of guide their own narrative. Well, it turns out they're actually not. They have not released a press release on their official website, which is dcedh.org/press releases is what I'm on. They have not released a press release since January 20th of this year. That is suspicious. That is some suspicious activity right there. What is going on? Why are they not communicating from their own marketing and communications department? Like, why aren't they sending out press releases during all of this turmoil, which again validates Bridget and Creatos's stories of hearing about it through professors and hearing about it through the news media, right? Like, why did students of this institution, which is held by this parent company, why did they not hear about it through an official press release from the parent company? And as we heard in Bridget's interview in the past episode, that's kind of the way it's always been. Like any kind of university or official communication that they had received was through the news or was through a peer or was through a professor. And so I think that's bizarre that Dream Center has not been communicating with the people who are paying them. So this press release from January 20th is basically just announcing the acquisition of the Art Institute. So they have not communicated publicly through their press release page since they acquired the Art Institute. So since January, we're in July now, since January, they've acquired this company and then just started shutting it down. All right. Now this is on top of the Art Institute losing accreditation, right? Like attitudes shifting around for-profit education. I get that, right? Like there's been a steady decline. So maybe this company, maybe Dream Center Education Holdings, picked up on that, like picked up on the shift in attitudes and was like somehow aware of the decreased enrollment at the Art Institute, and like positioned themselves to acquire this. But why? Like, why would a Pentecostal nonprofit acquire all of these Art Institute locations and acquire the Art Institute brand only to start shutting it down within 1 year of acquiring it? This is bizarre, right? Like, and I don't fully understand mergers and acquisitions, right? I don't have a full interest in that level of business, but there has to be something going on here, right? Like, why would they do that? Okay. There has to be a motive behind this. So another article that I pulled up that I need to digest and need to read because I actually think it answers some of these questions is from InsideHigherEd.com, and it writes about the sort of the transition that happened early with EDMC, which was the first parent company that sold it now to this Pentecostal nonprofit, right? Like, they're nonprofits, but they're acquiring a for-profit education system. Were they going to switch it? Are they switching it to a nonprofit system? Is this a way for someone who is in the Pentecostal faith to also get an art education with their faith infused into that art education? I'm fascinated. If you have any conspiracies around this, if you have any insights, any information, I would love to hear it. I would love to hear your voice around this. I would love to continue to interview Art Institute students and faculty. Regardless if you're here in Denver or at one of the other locations, I would love to interview alumni and what you think this means for your degree. As Bridget highlighted out now, the sad thing is, it's like she feels disappointed, or like, I don't know how to phrase this, but Bridget doesn't feel proud of saying that her degree is from the Art Institute. And that's something huge for the art industry, right? Like, we usually tout our educational pedagogy and like where we've learned and who we've learned from and what degrees we have, right? I even used big college words saying that, and I didn't need to. So yeah, if you know anything about this, or you've got any conspiracies or thoughts of your own, let me know. I just want to wrap this little segment up with reading some reviews from Indeed for working for the Dream Center Education Holdings, LLC. So Indeed.com is a place you can find jobs and all sorts of cool stuff. And part of that is reviewing these companies. Now, currently, as of recording this episode, Dream Center Education Holdings, LLC has 3.1 stars, and this is averaged out of 260 reviews. Okay, so I think that that's like a substantial body. I think that that's going to be, a pretty average review. We're not basing this off of 3 people here, okay? We're basing this off of 260 people who have taken the time and the energy to review their former employer, right? So I'm just going to sort these by date, and I'm going to maybe read 3 or 4, and then maybe I'll switch it to rating and helpfulness, just so we can get a fair gauge of what's going on here. So this was posted on July 9th, and it's called OK Job, 3 stars. A typical 9 to 5 with no advancement, no raises, and lots of stress. Understaffed, underpaid. Would only recommend for a temp job or to get the free college tuition for Argosy Art Institute or South University. Okay? 2 stars. It's a job, and this was submitted on June 28th of this year, 2018. DCEH has newly acquired the previous for-profit entity, EDMC. We can confirm that. The company has been less and less accommodating for the employees working there previously. No yearly raise and no little benefits as far as 401k. Currently, the environment is low morale and DCEH has a lot of promise for change, yet still need to be delivered or initiated in favor of current employees. This will be the last one I read sorted in terms of date. So, 3 stars. Do not know this company. I never worked for this company. This company, what? Wow. Okay, not reading that. Great corporate culture. Okay, I'll be fair. I'll read this one. Okay, 4 stars. Great corporate culture. And this was submitted May 22nd, 2018. DCEH has a great place to work as the corporate culture is fantastic. There are some good positions open to learn new advanced skills. However, the industry is in decline and a bit unsteady from a security standpoint. What a backhanded compliment that is. Your culture's great, but your industry's tanking. What kind of review is that? And you leave 4 stars on that? That's bizarre. I'm going to read. I said that was the last one I was going to read, but I want to read this one out of all fairness. 1 star, unstable organization. This was submitted the day before that review I just read on May 21st, 2018. After the change of ownership, the company took a direction which could place it in jeopardy regarding licensing and accreditation. My position was eliminated while the company continues to move towards new business enterprises, which may be considered a conflict of interest by many agencies. That I'm fascinated about, right? What is going on here? What is going on? Am I the only one? Maybe I'm talking to myself with this, but what is going on with Dream Center Education Holdings, LLC? I want to know. So we're going to keep talking about this in the podcast unless I start getting a bunch of negative reviews for it. But I'm really fascinated as what's going on with the Art Institute because it's changing the art education landscape, because it's changing the opportunities for education that artists and creatives have. And it's really a signifier, right? Education is pivotal and education shapes industries. And so now if we're eliminating an educational opportunity and we're eliminating a pedagogy, right? Art Institute was severely focused on the hustle and the drive and creative entrepreneurship, right? What happens now to our landscape now that this educational option is gone? Regardless if you disagree or agree with for-profit education, when you take that off of the table, now there is one less option for creative people to pursue an education. That's scary. And that's why I'm interested in this, is I'm interested in what it's doing to the art industry, and it's what it's doing for educational opportunities for creative people who already struggle in traditional systems of education, right? Been there, done that, right? Who struggle in 4-year institutions or who may not want to take on that challenge or who want to go back, as Bridget did, go back and continue their education. Now we have one less opportunity to do that. So what does this mean? What does this mean? And what is this Pentecostal nonprofit up to? This is a lot of money and a lot of real estate. I want to know what they're up to. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be back in just a moment. Oh, how are we doing, internet world? We doing good? Sweet. Okay. I'm liking this taking break segments thing. Hopefully it's helping. I only have I only have a half an hour left in here. I didn't even touch half of that. Okay. All right, welcome back, everyone. I just wanted to say I barely got through my notes on that. As you can tell, I'm very passionate about that. So I'll probably be addressing the whole Art Institute thing as it evolves and grows in future episodes, and as I start to form my own opinions, and you guys start to form your own opinions, and we have more and more guests on around the subject. I'm really interested in having a faculty or a staff member on. So if you know anybody that's worked for the Art Institute, please send them my way. I would love to have them on. But moving on to kind of wrap up this episode, I thought I would talk about the Instagram polls and making a good habit of talking about this at every and making a point of talking about the Instagram polls feedback in other places besides my story. And so bringing that into the podcast, I thought was a great way to do that. I really appreciate everyone who does vote and submits questions on my Instagram stories at Curtis. You can do that every weekend. I kind of have questions up and I have prompts up just to kind of gauge interest. And I might be doing that more in the week if I think about it. I still have a job that's eating up a lot of my time during the week, so I can't really sit down and craft stories as much as I want to. But I thought I would kind of get into this because it's some interesting content, and I think it's going to inform some future episodes. So what's really cool is in my first poll, I asked how many of you were listening to Creative Crunch. And it turns out about 2/3 of my followers who voted, I should preference, not just the whole, but 2/3 of my followers who voted are listening, which I really appreciate that. And I really appreciate you tuning into that. And I hope that maybe the live stream on Instagram is getting you to listen to the episodes on anchor.fm/Creative Crunch or Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Google Podcasts, wherever you listen. So really thanks to all my Instagram followers who are voting and listening, right? Shout out to you guys. You guys are the most engaged. Keep it up. Keep that hustle up. I'm talking to you. I am going to be asking this next question from time to time. So I ask, is YouTube dead, right? Because I get a lot of conflicting input. YouTube creators say one thing, the news sphere says another thing, the Twitter sphere says another thing. So I'm just always going to ask every so often what your level of engagement is with YouTube and what it looks like for you as you consume YouTube and things like that. And so one of the follow-up questions for today was what channels do you watch? I would love to dive deeper in and also selfishly subscribe to other channels and really kind of reach out and diversify my YouTube subscriptions. So please answer that if you're following me on Instagram and you get time to do that, or just DM me because by the time you're listening to it, it's probably closed. So in response to that, in response to a majority of the people voting that YouTube is not dead, I'm actually streaming today's entire recording session on YouTube. So if you wanted to go back and just put that on as a form of passive consumption, you would have 3 whole uninterrupted, unedited hours of me talking in the bunker. And I'm going to be rolling out YouTube highlights. I've been using my DSLR and my GoPro more and more to sort of capture content and to keep things going that way. So look out for those video highlights on YouTube. And I'm really excited to see that a lot of my audience is on YouTube, and that link will be in my Instagram bio, and I'll get it out on Twitter so we can kind of get connected that way. And then I don't know if we're going to get into this today, but it's definitely going to be a topic of a future episode. So I don't know if we're going to have time to get into this today, but I asked the creatives who follow me, the people who follow me, who are engaged, what is the balance between your active sources of income and your passive sources of income, right? I defined active sources of income as making the art and making the sale happen, standing at a craft fair booth, things like that. That's what I kind of defined as active. And then passive for me in terms of a photographer is things like stock photography, stock videography, Lightroom presets, right? These things that can be sold to make you money without you having to close the sale, right? All you would have to do, and what I see on YouTube is I see photographers talk about their presets, and then the link is in the bio to sell it, right? So every time they're selling the presets, they don't have to stand there and hand you a little thumb drive. You just download a file, they make money. So that's what I mean about passive income. Yeah, and so getting into that, 71% of the people who voted on my Instagram, 71% of people who voted on my Instagram poll said they have active sources of income as a creative, right? So a majority of the creative income that's being generated is dependent on that creative person being there, right? Which I think is really interesting. And so that's why I want to do some research around passive sources of income and what creatives can do to kind of make money while doing other things, right? Like if I'm still painting or if I'm on a photo shoot, how can I still make money, right? My stock photos can still sell. My Lightroom presets can still sell. My YouTube videos can still get played and I can get ad revenue off of that. Maybe I'm fortunate enough to have a sponsor for the video, so I get revenue off of that, right? So I want to elaborate on that and maybe like expand some passive sources of income because of your guys' feedback, right? And if it had been the other way, and everyone was sitting around making a lot of money off of passive income, I would want to explore that. And then I would also be looking at how you could do active. So just know your feedback is informing this. And then lastly, I just want to continually provide the opportunity to submit podcast topics and submit things to talk about because it really keeps my brain from getting exhausted. I really think it's going to help me from ever getting a creative block. If I always just have another idea or another suggestion to lean on, yeah, that will be really beneficial in the future. And it really has been, right, as I go into this. So I asked on my Instagram stories, like, what else do you guys want to hear talk about? And the first one is quite existential. One of my followers said, can art have no meaning? So we might unpack that today because that's pretty rambly. I can just ramble about that. And then the other one that's going to warrant some research, but that I really never thought about is how is public art funded, right? We're very fortunate in Denver that public art is abundant. And even in the metro suburbs, it's valued. And in the mountain communities, it's valued, right? Like it's very clear from a governmental standpoint that public art increases wellness and happiness and can make parks better and make spaces better. So I think this question is great. Like, how does public art get funded? Now, what is so interesting, and this I'm telling you is the power of social media and the power of these Instagram polls, is when I shared this question sticker back out, asking, does anybody know someone who works for the Rhino Art District? Does anybody know who works for the city of Denver, the city of Aurora? You know, like just off the top of my head, I mentioned 4 or 5 accounts, right, in hopes of stirring something up and in hopes of generating a research lead. And the Aurora government account like actually contacted me, like sent me a DM within the hour of posting this story and was like, hey, this person in our department would probably want to talk about this. Here's an email. Okay. So if you know someone who has done public art, is a public artist, has a focus on that, I would love to have them in the conversation. I've already have a couple names in my brain that I want to throw around. I would love to get someone from Crush Walls on to maybe do a little promo for an interview and to kind of just talk about that and what Crush looks like in the Rhino Arts District every year. I'm really looking forward to having this person on from the Aurora government side of things. And I know, I can't think of it off the top of my head, but there's a cool department in Denver that deals with public art and deals with giving grants for public art. I think it's Denver Arts and Venues. No, it's the Urban Arts Fund. Yeah, the Denver Urban Arts Fund. I know gives out grants and stuff like that. So I think it'd be interesting to have audio from that and to kind of get feedback on that. Yeah, so I really do like appreciate everyone contributing to the Instagram polls and contributing to that because your feedback really does inform Creative Crunch, right? This podcast is for you and is to give you insights into the industry, right? Like together through me as the medium, we're going to start demystifying a lot of the crap in the art industry, right? Like how do you navigate these processes? Where does the money come from? How do you get started? How do you continue to go? How do you use social media?
in all of this, right? Like that'll be a consistent thread through all of this is like, how does social media help you navigate these processes and navigate the landscape, right? Like how can your Instagram help you land deals? And these are the kinds of conversations that I want to have on the podcast. And, again, I've been talking about this a lot. I really do enjoy creative criticism. You guys are abstract thinkers. You're critical thinkers. You're capable of delivering that. So if there's something that can make this podcast better, you let me know. I'm doing it from like a marketing angle, right? Like I'm trying to push out more video. I'm trying to push out more content just around that, right? Like taking pictures with the GoPro and putting a quote or a thought on top of that on Facebook, I think has been getting some good engagement, and I really appreciate that. So yeah, I don't know. I think I'm going to take a quick break again. That has kind of been another good little ranty section. Covering the Instagram polls. And again, thank you to everyone who does that. Follow me on Instagram at Curtis or on Twitter. I think I'm going to start doing this more at Curtis_podcast. Your feedback is appreciated and it's really driving this train home. So we're going to take a quick break. And then I think I might just rant about some stuff because I don't think I'm going to be able to get into recording a whole nother episode. Yeah. You always plan for these things and then they go haywire, right? Which is good. I like the spontaneity of it. I like having notes for my podcast, but I really like just being able to go a little bit too. And so I think it'll be interesting navigating this balance as I move forward. All right, trying something new. I have no idea what looping does on my GoPro, but we're trying it. It's supposed to go in 5-minute intervals. I don't know what that means at all. Oh, God, I have to pee. We're back into like that final 30 minutes of the podcast where I have to do nothing but pee and be antsy and tentatively pack things up, but I guess I should be recording. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching Creative Crunch. Again, my name is Curtis Tucker. I've been your host this entire time. You've been listening to me. Yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to Creative Crunch. I'm your host, Curtis Tucker. Please leave a review wherever you listen. Send me an audio message on Anchor. Love to have you in future episodes. Send me a DM. Follow me on Instagram at Curtis, on Twitter at Curtis_podcast, or facebook.com/Curtis J. Tucker. I don't know how to tell you my YouTube link yet. I'm going to get that figured out. But if you're following me on those other pages, you should be able to find my YouTube link. I'm going to be doing a lot of like video recaps for Creative Crunch and kind of making content out of that, and just like turning it into things and whatnot, and just other ways for you guys to engage in what's going on and to contribute to the dialogue. Because as I've been saying, this podcast is just as much you as it is me. Thanks for listening to Creative Crunch. Again, I'm your host, Curtis Tucker. I appreciate you tuning in. I appreciate everyone who's been tuning in on the live streams. I do this every Monday afternoon from about 12 to 3 Mountain Standard Time. Various networks, various times, but it's usually my Instagram at Curtis. And then once that timer expires, I've been moving over to Twitter at Curtis_podcast. And then I experimented today with YouTube live streaming. Right? Nobody was really watching the Facebook streams, so I switched it over to YouTube. And that seems to be going well. Got a couple likes, got a couple watchers, which is nice. So I'll make sure you get my YouTube link as well coming up in the descriptions. Yeah, all those links should be in the descriptions, speaking of it. Thanks for listening to another episode of Creative Crunch. I'm your host, Curtis Tucker. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, would you mind leaving us a review? Thanks. I'd really appreciate that. We're also available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and wherever you and your friends are listening. So really spread the word, please. I'd greatly appreciate that. You can tune into the live streams starting at around noon on Monday on my Instagram at Curtis. When that timer runs out, I usually move it over to Twitter at Curtis_podcast or through the Periscope app. And then I've been trying to live stream the whole kit and caboodle, right? All 3 hours on YouTube. I started off doing that on Facebook, but I think I got other content going there. So I'm not too worried about that. I think I'll just kind of be putting it on YouTube because that's where the video highlights for Creative Crunch are going to be living, and things like that. So again, I really appreciate you listening. I really appreciate everyone who voted on things and who contributed and who tuned into the live stream. We'll see you guys next Monday for a brand new episode and a brand new live stream. Yeah, I think that's good. I'd rather stop now than keep running to the end. Okay. Oh, crap. All right, let's see here. Stop. File. Share song to disk. Desktop. Export. Okay. Canon back up next. What is this do? Oh, Flipkart. Start sketching? What? Ask for follow, ask for share. Start sketching. That's crazy. I didn't know you could do that. I could hide the chat too. Where would I be from? That's too good to be true. See, it hit the 5-minute mark. What does that mean? What does it mean? So that'll be the last thing. Okay. All right. Bye, Twitter. All right. Bye, YouTube.